Hello everyone and welcome to BTC, the Writers Room. We are so thrilled to have Trey Anthony with us. Yay! There should be clapping like an applause at that point, do you know what I mean? But we're doing this.
It's like a crowd roar.
Yeah, exactly. In our minds, that's what's happening right now. But I just want to just introduce the amazing Trey. If you don't know about her, she is an award-winning writer and producer. She is the first Black woman in Canada to have a television series on Primetime Network. Her work includes the plays The Kink in My Hair and How Black Mothers Say I Love You. She is co-writing a feature film, which is an adaptation of her play entitled How Black Mothers Say I Love You, which is supported by Telefilm Canada and Film Wales. Trey is a former writer for the comedy network Global TV OWN and has recently joined the writing team of the television show Unconventional, created by Emmy-nominated Kit Williamson. She has won 4 NAACP awards. That's when the applause should happen. And has delivered a popular viral TED Talk, which I have watched. This is absolutely amazing. Watch it now. Well, watch it after this. She is a contributing writer for Huffington Post. Her new book, Black Girl in Love with Herself, published by Penguin, Random House and Hay House, is now available. I've got Hair is available January 2021, but it's now available, right?
It's available. Yes, it's available.
Yeah.
It's on sale.
That is
so
impressive introduction. Thank you so much for being with us. Amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You know what, Trey? I absolutely, like Sim said, I loved your TED Talk. Like, I really absolutely loved it. I felt so inspired. And then when you then mentioned your grandma being on Trisha, I was like, yes, it's just on Trisha. I was like, oh, absolutely. And I think I just kind of really related to the whole messaging that you had with regards to, you know, answering your call and when your call is going to come. I mean, how did you pick that particular subject? Because I mean, you're quite bossy. You could have talked about just about anything, really. But why was that the one that you thought, you know, the world needed to hear?
Well, it's funny, when we got the invitation to do the TED Talk, they give us a subject matter, and the subject matter was get out of your box. And so as I was thinking about the subject matter, get out of your box, I just started to relay it to my life of like, when did I feel that I got out of my box and in my career, and how did I feel that people boxed me in, and how did I avoid being boxed in? And for me, it was because I had a true sense and understanding that I had a calling in the world to do what I needed to do, right? And that involves my creativity, that involves my writing, that involves storytelling, that involves centering Black women's voices. And so for me, I think when you walk through the world with a sense of a calling and a purpose, it's very hard for people to put you in a box. They will want to put you in a box, but you are kind of like, nah. And like I said in the talk, I'm so much bigger than the box you want to try and put me in. So that's kind of how it all came about for me.
Look, I live by that. So for me, like what Saru said, that resonated hard. I was like, yes, yes, like live your purpose, find your calling, and just go for it. I really want to talk about Black Girl in Love with Herself.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, that title alone, you're like, oh, that's deep. That's kind of like, look, learning to love yourself. And what does that mean as a Black woman, right? What does that mean? And I just love the title of the book. And I just really want you to sort of just talk more to that. Like, tell us more about what does that mean for you, you know, in terms of loving yourself as a Black woman? And what can we expect from the book?
Oh, for sure. For me, the book was, and the title was, I had just ended a relationship, and it was funny. I was in one of those, you know, when you break up with somebody and you're in the bathroom and you're crying. And I don't know if anybody else does this, but I like to look at myself in the mirror when I'm crying. I don't know what this is about, but for me, it makes me just feel like, oh my gosh, this is real pain. I can see it, right? And witness it, right? So I was having one of those bathroom moments, looking in the mirror, crying. And then I said, oh my gosh. And, you know, this wouldn't have happened if you were in love with yourself. You just allowed certain behaviors. You closed your eyes to certain things because you were so desperate to be loved by somebody. And it was just like this little voice in me just said, from here on out, you are going to be a Black girl in love with herself, that you cannot give over the duty of someone loving you to someone else. Right. And so I was just like, no, the love has to come from within you. And I think it's that whole thing of you attract where you are. I'm a big believer in that. And I believed at that point, I had attracted that relationship in my life and given away so much of my power because I was so desperate in trying to have somebody love me. Right. And I was so invested in the relationship. I was so invested in having #couple goals written underneath my Instagram post that I refused to listen or look at a lot of the real glaring red flags because I so wanted to be in a relationship. And I think for a lot of women, especially when you hit our mid-30s and 40s, we have that checklist, right? And the checklist is you meet your person, you then, you know, you get married to your person, then you buy your house and you have kids. And I was just invested in that checklist. And I was just like, I got to tick this off, right? I'm there. And so for me, it was a real, I think, cruel, but really inspiring moment for me to say, this is what happens when you stop loving yourself. And you've got to learn how to love yourself again. And so that's where the title came from for me. It was that just guttural response to going, what happened? Like, whose life is this? And how did you end up here on the bathroom floor, now getting up, looking at yourself crying in the bathroom mirror? What happened here? Right?
Wow. That's truly amazing. And I think there's also something about just how we're conditioned to serve. You know what I mean?
Yes.
How we're conditioned to serve others and to, you know, be so considerate of others, right? I think especially as a Black woman, I think that's why we do make the best and you know the best activists, and because we're doers, we're like, no, we want change and we have to do it, and like, you know, kind of right there in the front, on the front line. So I think there really is something about taking a step back and going, but what do I need? What do I need myself, and how do I pour love into myself? You know what I mean? How do I love myself? You know, I love that.
It's so
No,
true.
me too.
It's very, very true. It's funny. I saw this meme this morning, and it said, there's going to come a time in your life when you realize you are worthy of the love that you give to others. And I was like, yes. I was like, yes. Yes.
Oh my God. Like,
I find all of us know how to give it to others, and yet we don't know how to pour it into ourselves. Right?
Oh my God. Literally on my wall, I've got a vision board, right? And one of the quotes on there is, treat yourself with the same love you show others.
Yes, girl. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's a really tough one because I mean I completely understand as well, because like Sim, like I've always thought of myself as somebody who's likely to be of service. Whenever I get into a situation, I always assess it with that hat on to say, okay, I'm in this situation, how can I be of service? And it is, and like, but I've gotten to that space because single woman in her 30s, yes. And I have gotten into that space where so many people around me are expecting me to be ticking up that list, you know, just be going through the checklist, going through it, and finding that moment where I'm like, you know what, I'm okay. Like I'm good right now. I'm loving me so much, and I don't know if I can find somebody who's gonna love me as much as I love me right now. You know, and having that kind of confidence to say that to your African mother,
Oh, girl.
to your African mother is like everything.
It is something else. It's so funny how our mothers really put this extra pressure. In the book, it's funny because my mother's Jamaican, and I said in the book, after this big breakup and my relationship of 5 years had come crashing down, my mother looked at me and said, "It's just so unfortunate that you have found yourself alone at this time in your life."
Oh my God. I am pretty sure your mother is my mother.
And I was just like, what do you do with that? Like, what can I do with that? But she just had just this look of just pity, like my whole life had come to an end. Like every single accomplishment meant nothing because I now was by myself at this point in my life, right? And she goes like, how did this happen? And I was just like, you know what, just let this one go. I am not going to take this on.
Yeah, no words, Mom.
Yeah.
But it's so spectacular as well, because I mean you are incredibly accomplished though, Trey. Like, and it is like all of those things just make you even phenomenally more lovable, you know, and
Yes.
just like the way that your voice and the way that you present to the world and the things you've put into the world. I mean, good God, Trey, it's fine. I love you.
Thank you. Thank you. I need it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Trey, one of my favorite questions, because Sim works with provocations. She works with provocations, and when she was putting together her second anthology books, one of her provocations was who writes for whom, or who can write for whom.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to ask you, because this is my favorite question, like, who do you write for?
I write primarily, and I say it unapologetically, for Black women. In that Black women are always centered in my work, are always centered in that space for me. They are the people who are my primary audience. That being said, one of the things that I have found, and you know, I don't like to use that word, but this is the word that they have used of like crossover. Your work has crossover appeal, mainstream appeal, it's gone commercial, blah, 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 blah. I think the reason why my work has tended to go mainstream or had crossover appeal, I truly believe when you as a writer center your work in a level of authenticity, truth, and vulnerability, people will find themselves in your work regardless of race, gender, class, sexuality. And the biggest example of this I give is in my work, The Kink in My Hair. There was a monologue that I did about Nia. And Nia was a very dark-skinned Black girl. And in the monologue, it deals with shadeism. And she talks about, and this was an experience that I had within my own family of coming from a family who very much valued the lighter skinned children in the family, right? And so in the monologue, Nia says to her mother, I just want you to look at me and see me, right? And I'm tired of you always looking at Sandy and thinking she's the pretty one and giving her the love that I never got. And she goes, Mom, can you just look at me? And so after the play, we were in this 2,000-seat theater, commercial run theater. I came out to do a Q&A, and this blonde, blue-eyed woman stood up and she put her hand up and she said, oh, I just want to tell you, the Nia monologue just spoke to me. I just saw myself in that monologue. So I looked at her and I was like, I think you have maybe the wrong monologue, right? I said, the Nia monologue was about colorism and the dark-skinned sister saying her mother favored the light-skinned one. And she goes, yeah, that's the one. And she said, because I was always the fat sister and my sisters were always skinny. And so when she said, Mom, look at me, I want you to love me like you're my sister, she goes, that was my whole experience of being invisible and thinking my mother didn't love me because I didn't meet her expectations of what she thought her daughter should look like. And that is when it clicked to me that people will find themselves in your work if you write from this place of just truth. And it was just so, to me, that was such a niche monologue. That was an experience of either, you know, people of color or racialized people. I never thought that would transcend to someone else, and yet she found herself in that monologue. And so that is when it came to me. I was just like, you can center your work and think you are only speaking to one specific audience, but people will find themselves in your work if it's centered in truth.
That is so. I mean, we could go. I really am tempted to push more on that because I'm like, okay, but did you get the point as well? But like, I do think there's something about the, you know, and people always talk about sort of what's universal, what's not universal.
Yes.
How do, you know, that whole perception of what is then classed as universal? Is it universal because, you know, you can see something and then you adapt it for your own, you know, I mean, in terms of your own experience, or do you go there to understand maybe a different experience that might not be so in line with your own personal experience? Like, and I think that, you know, both things are kind of relatively, you know, I mean, you know, it really is down to the person and their capacity, really. Do you know what I mean? To kind of really kind of take on, you know,
Yes.
you know, the things that we do, we naturally have to because of the limited amount of work and opportunities and the fact that we can't always, you know, we don't always have that level of representation. So we are forced to, you know,
of course,
always do that. And, you know,
always find ourselves in their work.
Always trying to find ourselves in the work, like try and find ourselves in, you know, in whether it be Shakespeare that's kind of drilled down our throats when we're in, you know, education or whatever. Everyone knows how I feel about the whole Shakespeare thing. But I think it's really, I think that's really interesting, and it you know, I think that just for me it opens up a can of worms of what that moment really was, and like how to really kind of look at that moment. But ultimately, I think you're right. I think it's human nature for you to put yourself into any scenario, right? Do you know what I mean? And try and take something that's really personal that resonates with you, with yourself. I really want to talk about, because, you know, before we even started recording, we're talking about, okay, can we claim you? Or can you?
She's already claimed. She's claimed, Sim.
Yeah,
she's already claimed.
Jamaica, and then I was like, oh, we can claim you as well as a Jamaican. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So we were just talking about, so for those who obviously you guys were not record that point, I was asked, and I was just kind of just making sure, just confirming with Trey whether she regards herself as a Canadian writer, right? She's currently not in Canada at the moment, but then she enlightened us and she was like, yeah, I'm a Canadian writer, but I was born in the UK. And
yes.
And then she revealed that she's got a Jamaican grandmother. I'm like, I'm all for this life. So I really do want to talk specifically to Canada, though. I spent a little bit of time going back and forth to Canada, and of course, we're doing the research for the books. In fact, really, it was really important for me to include Canadian writers actually in the second monologue anthology that I put together, because I'm gonna just be really honest. My knowledge of Canadian writers, especially Black writers, was so limited, and I wondered just in terms of your perspective as a Black female playwright, you know, what your take is on representation in Canada, and like how is that shifting from being local to then being international? And like, did you feel that you had to kind of, you know, go across the waters to kind of get that level of recognition, or just what the state is in Canada currently?
In Canada, I think we have a very similar history with our writers as UK writers. You know, I have a lot of family and friends who are in the industry in England, and I truly do believe it's the same script, for lack of a better pun, that we're all saying, right? Of a lot of times you do not get that big break, or you hit a glass ceiling that happens a lot in the UK and a lot in Canada, that people have said to me, for example, if I had started my career in the US and done everything that I had done in Canada, I would be a household name now, kind of like the Tyler Perrys or the Katori Halls, or, you know, that kind of stuff, right? So there's definitely a different level of, I think, just like this quote unquote star system, we don't have that in Canada, right? And I think Canada, we suffer from that whole thing of we're so close to the US. So they are kind of like, we, instead of kind of looking at our homegrown talent, we rather invest and spend the money on American talent, right? I always remember when I was doing my show in Canada, the TV show, and one of the things, and it was sad to say, but people kept saying to us, oh, I love the show, and we didn't realize it was Canadian because it was just so well done, and the production value and things like that, right? Because they didn't think that we could actually produce a quality show. And even when I've had my show done in the Kink has been done, How Black Mothers Say I Love You has been done in Atlanta, it's been done in New York, it's been done, I'm forgetting some places, San Diego, you know, there's been a lot of American productions. And the pushback that I always get at all times when they do it is, can we change the setting? We don't want it to be in Toronto. Can it be a hair salon in New York? Or can Black mothers be set in Florida? You know, and so it's that erasing of our culture, right? And I think the only thing for me, and that I'm really always adamant about, is that you cannot take the West Indian cultural aspect out of my work. Like, that's what it has to be. And it's come to the point where I have to sometimes go in and sit in auditions with the directors and the producers, because to them, especially in America, it's kind of, well, it doesn't matter, it's Black. No, it does matter. It actually does matter that there's a nuance to Caribbean, Canadian, English culture. And I feel that's where I feel I settle into my work, because when I go to England, it feels very Canadian to me, right? Like it's very similar, right? Like the West Indian, the Nigerian, all of that feels very like, oh, I'm home. I know this. And I think sometimes as Black Americans, that's the only experience we ever get to see and hear. And I think it's only recently, you know, they're starting to talk about the immigrant experience and what that looks like for Black people.
Yeah.
Right. And before, it's always kind of like, you know, the Black American experience is supposed to talk for all Black people. And I'm kind of like, that actually isn't my experience. It really is not my experience. I don't know this. This is actually very foreign to me. Right. And so that has been something that I've been really working for. And I feel especially there's been this resistance in the US sometimes, especially when I first started, of I don't know if the American audience is going to get this. It's a little too Caribbean. It's a little too Canadian. And I'm like, they're going to get it. They're going to get it, and they're going to love it, because there's actually a world outside of America. I know you guys don't believe this, but there's actually a world outside of America.
Exactly. It's so strange, but America has that pushback, even with like British work. They're like, whoa, are we going to get this? Is this going to be, you know, something that's going to resonate with our audiences if it's not American and set in America? They were like, you know what I mean? That's so true.
And the funny thing is, what I find with American audiences, every time I do my work, they always are like, I just love this. This is a whole different experience. This is something different. Because one woman came back to me and she said, as important as it is of seeing the stories of, you know, I call them the slave stories of, you know, woe was me. And she goes, sometimes I get tired of seeing work where Black people ain't winning. She goes, and that was refreshing in your work to just see well-rounded, everyday people. She goes, we actually won in this play. And she goes, sometimes I walk out of theater and I'm like, whoa, that was really depressing, right? She goes, how many times do we have to see the slave narrative? As important as it is, and we know it, but we know it, we've seen it, and we've been really invested in it. And I for one, don't need to know any more about it. And I want to see a different type of Black story. And so that was where my work was rooted in. I was like, I have a different experience. Culturally, I have a whole different experience. Being raised by proud Jamaicans, I have a whole different way how I move through the world than my Black American friends, and they tell me that they're like, "Oh, she does that because she's Jamaican. She's Jamaican." Right? Right. And I feel we have to know that there's other stories to be told. There's other Black stories, other narratives that need to be told. And I feel only now we're starting to be a bit more open to that.
Quite interesting when you say that, you know, they are saying, will our Black audience get it? Or they are saying, can we change it? And then the audience is saying, that was refreshing. That was good to see. Like, it's almost like why are you the ones who are deciding what this audience should and should not see? Why are you coddling them to a point where you're telling them that this is the Black experience that they need to be living in spaces like theaters and things? It's so crazy. Like, I honestly, like, obviously I'm an immigrant in the UK, so my experience is that it's a part of the diaspora. I am very African. I've got very African family, and you know. But then I also have this sense where I've been in the UK for the majority of my life as well. You know, and it's like both of those things are part of my makeup. Yes. And to strip one of the other, or to like make me be part of a narrative that does not necessarily conform to that, doesn't make sense to me. And it doesn't make sense to me to strip other Black people of their heritages because they're different to us. It's the color yes. that makes us all so beautifully wonderful variations of Black and very Definitely. Necessary. Do you find that, because you've written for both TV and theatre, so do you find that it's the same kind of argument or the same fight with regards to representation in TV?
Definitely. I think, especially in TV, we are adapting a TV show based on How Black Mothers Say I Love You, the play, and we shopped it around to so many networks, and it's an amazing script. Like, it's, and I'm not just saying that because it's my script, but it's such and
bias on you, Trey.
The feedback we got from every single American network was, we just think we're not sure if our Black American audience is going to get this, or our other audience is going to get it. It just seems so culturally specific. And so I was kind of like, okay, and we are, we play with things, like you play with things to the point of, if you want to get your script sold, these are certain things that you want to do. But then there's also a part as you as a creator who's kind of like, I actually can't do that. There are certain things that are just so authentic to the story. I cannot switch that out or play that in or whatever. And so that's what we're grappling with right now as we're doing rewrites of, like, how Americanized can we get it to sell it, but how can we also then not sell out our souls for the sake of making it Americanized, right? So it's a very precarious place to be as Black creators, and especially as creators who are not Black American. And so I think only now people are starting to open up and be much more open to the different possibilities and different worlds. But I find a lot of the times, like, even when you look on TV, if it's not a story of, someone, growing up in the ghetto and being shot and selling drugs, or, it's just kind of, I was just like, I just want a story like of like a Black family doing shit, right? And having Black dysfunction, but nobody selling drugs, nobody gets killed. You know what I mean? And that's the kind of, like I said, my family's as dysfunctional as any other white family that you see, right? Why can't we have a 6 feet under? Like that. Those are the kind of things. But they're very invested in telling those stories. And so, and we have to really start to shift the narrative. And if those stories aren't being told, then the stories then that get told, if we are seeing Black families who aren't getting shot and killed and blah, blah, and selling drugs, then they're comfortable with those stories being told in a comedic space. But it's very few in drama space where we just get just regular Black people just trying to get by. Right. Yeah. And if you think about it, like, how many Black dramas do we have of just regular Black people just trying to make it, which are not set in a half-hour comedy space?
Yeah.
right?
That's
And that is
so
what we're trying to
true.
always go against, of
Yeah.
this is what we want to do. And they just always want to put you back in either a comedy space or give me somebody selling some drugs, give me somebody getting shot. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't want to do that. That's not my reality.
Well, amen to you, because that's so much news. It's just so needed. Do you know what I mean? And it's just taken a lot of energy, and I'm sure like a lot of people getting knocked back, been getting back up again, and then knocking back on those doors and being like, or just setting it up themselves. But definitely we need these networks to change and to sort of shift gears, because you're right, it's the same formula. It's what it is. It's a formula that they go, but it sells.
It sells.
Gets rolled out time and time again. I'm really interested in you, Trey, like just in terms of, and I guess it's about like your work, and you know what it was? It reminded me when you was talking about, I think you were saying in terms of the TED Talk about it being about living outside the box, or pushing sort of through that, and being able to kind of live your life with purpose, with your calling, which actually means that you're sort of stepping outside of your comfort zone, right? You're kind of constantly stretching yourself and assessing where you are and then moving forward. And I just sort of wonder that how does that sort of philosophy play out in terms of your plays, your play library, and what you are setting up for yourself to write next? And how does that is that something of which you're sort of building on, or is like, how do you like to work? Is it something that you've already in your mind got, I know that writers are constantly working on ideas and plays, but how are you sort of taking that same analogy of kind of stepping outside of the box, and how are you sort of implementing that within the work that you write?
For me, I'm one of those people who writes what matters to me and what's important. And if I read a headline or I think of a story and I wake up with it, and I wake up with it a couple of days out of the week, then I feel compelled to write it. And at the risk of sounding woo, right? I do feel a lot of times, every single work that I've been done, that there has been something or a spirit or energy that has said to me, this is what we're writing. And I'm just a vessel for that, to be able to do that work, right? And so a lot of times when I get in that zone, it's like the play basically writes itself, right? Like I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, oh, this is what you want me to say? Okay. And it just kind of keeps coming. And so that's how I tend to write. I also write stories where if we're working out something within my family that's taking up a lot of time and something sticks with me, like for example, How Black Mothers Say I Love You. I wrote that play when my grandmother was terminally ill with cancer and I was her primary caregiver. And I asked her a simple question. I said, Grandma, because I was reading this book called The 5 Regrets of the Dying. And I said, Grandma, do you have any regrets in your life? And I thought my grandmother would have said, oh, I regret, not going to school or not traveling. And she said, I regret leaving my children behind in Jamaica and coming to England because it's something your mother has never forgiven me for, and my children have never forgiven me. And it just hit me like right there, like this was a part of her and a history that I didn't know. And as I started to think about that and ask, and so many of us, like I'm sure if I asked either one of you, you have someone in your family who has left their children at some point to go on to quote unquote build a better life in a first world country. And it was so prevalent in our culture, yet nobody was talking about it. And so I just felt a need to talk about that history that so often gets left out of the history books, of these women who came over as domestic workers to the UK, to Canada, to America, to look after white America. And nobody talks about their contribution and what that does to a family, because everybody talks about the happy immigrant story, but nobody talks about the emotional ramifications of what happens when the matriarch of the family leaves and what happens in between. And for me, I was like, this is the only story I want to write. And it just started to flow from that, because I felt my grandmother and women like her deserve their stories to be centered stage, you know, just as much as anybody else, you know. And we so often get left out of history, and yet we're creating it every day and we're living in it every single day. And it's like, yeah, I was just like, those women deserve to be seen and heard. And as I started interviewing so many other women who were in the same age as my grandmother, some of them just cried literally as I was doing research, because nobody had asked them. Nobody thought that their stories were valid. And to me, that's when I say I feel I have a calling and purpose. I want to give women like that, just like give them some recognition. Like they basically carried the world on their backs, and no one wants to say, hey, you, I see you. You deserve something for that, you know? And that's where I feel invested, is giving those women like my mother, women like my grandmother, working class Black women, a story and a voice, because we're so much more than, you know, Tyrone selling drugs on the corner. I don't know that story. That ain't my story. Right?
It's so
That's
wild.
right. That's right. And I love that. I think especially given the backdrop of what was happening last year, the year before last year, with the Windrush generation.
With Windrush, yes.
You know, and it's really interesting just in terms of, you know, I was actually going back and interviewing a lot of the older generation within my family, and knowing that, you know, a lot of them, majority of them, you know, a good majority of them were, you know, already had jobs before they left, right? They kind of had, they didn't, you know, this story, this whole idea of them just coming to you know, another country with just what, the clothes on their back and maybe one case, like, and then that's it. And then they're just, you know, no, they came here because they were called for. They came here because they were seen as, like, when we're looking at sort of these essential workers, they were the essential workers. You know what I mean? They're the ones that rebuilt, you know, a lot of, you know, places that we see, the buildings that we see, the transportation systems, all of those sorts of things. Like, I mean, who do you think was operating them? Like the hospitals, you know, taking care of. And you're so right in terms of, like, what were the sacrifices? The sacrifices were the children that they couldn't bring with them. The sacrifices, you know, was that really just in terms of that generational trauma, and how that generational trauma really impacts on generations, you know what I mean? And so that those choices, you know, that you're so right. And the fact that they had intentions of going back, you know what I mean? Like, there's so much in that. There's so much in that. So it's fantastic. And just really quickly before Suru jumps in with a question.
I was going to jump into the comment.
Oh, you was comment then? No,
no, actually, because I absolutely, Trey, like I love that you told that story, because, you know, I come from, like, my mom, it's a running joke in my family, because my mom left me in order to come here, you know, and she always, like, my mom's a crier, so she would always talk about how she wept for days and days and days at a time because she missed me so much. And my whole family, everybody knows this, because my mom, everybody knows this. And it's so incredible that, you know, even within our community, even within our family, you know, that loss and that sacrifice is not something we take seriously, or even talk with regards to the mental health implications of having to essentially leave an actual child behind, you know. And I think that is just, it's so spectacular. It's like so many things that exist and are so commonplace within our communities, and yet somehow we just don't ever put voice to them, and would never see them on TV or, you know, in a play or anything. So no, that's just really spectacular. So yeah, thank you. Okay, Sim.
So just a really good question, just because I really want to understand how it came to be of the adaptation from stage to screen. You know, I mean, what was how did that come to be? What was the thinking? Was that always the intention? And if not, when did it become the intention? When did it become like, no, actually, this should be on the screen? And is it something that you're looking to do as a sort of an episodic way, or is it a film that you're trying to create?
I think it's a feature.
Is that for Black mothers or the Kink? The Kink in My Hair, the TV show? Which one?
Mothers, I was referring to.
Oh,
you know, you can talk to both. I mean, come on, you've got like a few hair that you're working on.
Black mothers, I think for myself, I always knew that I wanted to do a TV series on it. Like I knew the play just kind of scratched the surface, and you know, there's only so much story you can tell in 2 hours. And I always knew there was a life outside for this family. And so when we did the play, Clement Virgo, he's done The Wire, he's done The Book of Negroes. He came to see the play, and he then said, you know, I see this as a feature. And from the feature, then we started talking about maybe doing a TV series. And so he saw the vision right away. And then, of course, too, his family, he came from a family where his mother left him in Jamaica and came to Canada. So he really resonated with the piece as well, right? So it is something I feel for me, and in that, because it's such a niche story and it's about these women who have come and who have left their children behind, we have had such a hard time selling the show because people just don't, they can't see beyond that, right? Of thinking of how important this story is to be told. And I haven't watched it yet, but I've heard Small Axe talks a lot about that. And I think now with the success of that, maybe more people now are going to be more open to telling those kind of stories. And so I'm really happy, you know, that door is now being opened, you know. So, but I think with my work, I like to always think about what other medium it can be served in. And with the feature film, we went even deeper, and we went and told the story more from the daughter's perspective of her coming out as a queer woman in Jamaica. Wow. And whereas with the TV show, it's more focused on the mother leaving her children behind in Jamaica. So it was always very clear to me, like I wanted to show the story through the mother's eyes, Daphne, and I also wanted to show the story through the daughter's eyes, Claudette. So each one serves a different purpose. The feature feels very different from the TV series.
Okay, thank you. And how long has the process been so far?
Oh my God, we've been working on this for about, I would say 3 years. 3 years we've been trying to sell this. So, you know, I forgot what show it was where somebody said that it took them, I think 15 years. It just won a whole bunch of awards. I can't remember what it was. There was a show that's done really well recently. I can't remember. Oh God, it's going to come to me. And I was like, dear God, please don't let that be me.
Exactly. You're like, no, come on. It's got to be the year. This is the year.
Yeah, but I heard that as well. I heard that as well about the show that took 15 years. Oh my God, what is that show?
I can't remember what show it was, but it's one of those popular shows now that everybody's talking about. And they said it took him 15 years to sell it. I can't remember the name of it, but I was like, oh dear God. Yeah.
That's a long time. A long time. That's crazy. Oh
so
no.
I'm like, no, I don't want to do that.
Oh wow. Okay, so Trey, with regards to like your hope, like what do you hope for your work that you put out in the world? I mean apart from the obvious, which is obviously to get it made, to get it seen, I mean, what kind of impacts do you want it to have?
I feel for me, I've always want to put work out in the world that centers Black women, that makes us feel proud, makes us feel seen and heard. Like even the book Black Girl in Love with Herself, one of the biggest feedbacks when I read some of the reviews on Amazon is people are like, I actually feel seen. This is a self-help book that I didn't know that I needed as a Black woman, because we're so often left out of those spaces. And this is so specific. Someone said this is food for the soul. Someone said, I can't put this down because this is a book about a Black girl like me. And so for me, it's always about, for me, getting that nod, you know, that nod when you walk down the street and you see a Black girl and we kind of do that, right? Right? And we know exactly what that means. We don't have to have any kind of words. For me, my whole career is built on that nod. I want Black women to know I see you, right? And we have that nod, and it's an unspoken kind of dialogue and a history and a love, and it's a comfort. that when we walk into a room and there's two of us in a sea of whiteness, we know we see each other. Right? And that's, to me, is how I want to function with my work. That you walk in that room and you're like, oh, that's the Black girl. That's the Black girl who's got me. Right? And I think too often the dialogue is spread about Black women not having each other. And that has not been my experience.
No.
It has not been my experience of Black women trying to hold me down. It's been quite the opposite, you know? And for me, that's the energy I give out. And maybe that's why that's the energy I get. But Black women have been my biggest advocates, my biggest supporters, the people who I go to get comfort and cry and support. They're the ones who buy the tickets. They're the ones who are buying my books. They're the ones who are spreading the word. They're the ones who are funding my films. So that has not been my experience. And I always get the Black girl nod. So to me, that's what it is. I work for that Black girl nod. And Black women always say, we know Trey is going to represent us in a way that feels authentic to us. Yeah. And so that's what I work on. That, you know, when you go to a Trey Anthony show, you're going to be like, yeah, that girl knows us. She knows us.
Yes.
I love that. Look, we need to keep it moving. Like, we've got so many other questions for you. Please come back. Please come back and do this again.
Yes, more and more and more.
But before we do this, there's a segment that we love to do with everyone that comes onto the show. And actually, this is a way of kind of giving homage to other people, right? It's a way for us to kind of really celebrate, you know, other people who we consider to be in the beyond the Canon library. And so, Cyril, I'm going to just hand it over to you, just to introduce us. I'm so sorry. My second one, it's okay. Funny, so I'm going to just jump up and just try and sort it out.
No, you do you. But yeah, no, absolutely. It's kind of initially, this is one thing that we're never going to really get rid of, because we wanted to ask every single writer who comes onto the show if they could just tell us of the work that inspired them and that they wish they had read, because maybe you came across it later in life, but you wish you had read prior to you being Trey Anthony, or at least Trey Anthony, the writer, just kind of like that. So if you could speak to your 3 plays, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I really loved, of course, Colored Girls. I loved that just because, for me, it didn't follow the traditional structure of a play. And for me, I don't feel especially in the Kink, follow the traditional structure of a play. And I loved that it was kind of like this poetic love song. So for me, that was really important. The other work that I really love is Adventures of a Black Girl in Search of God from Janet Sears. Yes. And for me, the funny thing about that was, it was the first time that I had ever seen a Black play have so much production value and money placed into it. And so when I went and I saw, like, she had about 35 Black people on stage, I was like, what? Right? And it was in this amazing theater, and the costumes and the singing, and I was like, damn, look at us. And for me, it just opened up the realm of possibility of what your work could look like when someone's funding it, right? And how you don't have to limit yourself, because a lot of times, because I produce my own work, a lot of the times before it gets picked up, I'm always like doing the numbers and the math about like, oh, well, can we have 3 actors? Maybe 3 can play the other part and double up and blah, blah. And that was the first time I was like, this is what it looks like when you actually dream beyond your circumstances. And that really opened up that world for me. So that was something that I really loved. The Color Purple, and I write about this, the play, commercially done. For me, I write about this in my book. The Color Purple always has a different spot in my heart, because it was the first book I ever read what had a female protagonist, Black female protagonist in it. When I was leaving England, my father and mother separated, and my father still stayed in England, and my mother moved to England, to Canada. And my dad gave me The Color Purple. I was age 11. in the airport to read on the plane, and I had an 8-hour flight, and I just gobbled up that book. Like, I was just like, oh my God. So to actually see it, I saw it at Mervish, which also was the commercial theater who did the Kink when we went commercial. So again, it just felt very full circle for me of seeing that work on stage and seeing again what it can look like when I'm a big thing around funding and dreaming, and, you know, and I think a lot of times as Black women, as Black writers, as Black producers, we do things. I know for me, I've done my work under really less than ideal circumstances to get it out there, right? And I think a lot of us come from that. And so for me, when I see work like that, it makes me believe it's possible for us as Black women to have that support of having our work funded in the, like, imagine if we were all given the same amount of money to sit down and write, just to think, and just to write, right? Like what that would look like for us. But so many of us are doing it in between, you know, doing our full-time job, going home to pick up our kids, you know, stress, paying bills, right? We don't sometimes have that luxury of just being able to create. And so for me, seeing work like that done on a bigger stage with money and budgets, it really confirms to me that my work is worthy of that, and I am worthy of that. So I like to go to, you know, of course, now we can't go to theater, but I especially go to commercial theater and plays done by Black women, because I want to know it's possible for me to have that kind of level of funding behind my work.
Oh my God, definitely. It's so important. It's so important to know that that's a possibility, and to see it, and to yeah, it's fantastic. I'm just thinking of sort of Dominique. I'm thinking of, you know, just as you're talking, I'm just thinking of Nambi as well. You know, shout out to them and to all the others as well, right? That are really kind of pushing forward, and also holding that space for others as well. You know, they really are holding that space. So that's fantastic. So we're going to do a quick lightning round of you.
Oh God, I didn't know about this one.
Quick. This one's real quick. This is a new.
Okay. I'm like, oh God.
Okay.
No, it's easy. It's easy. The rules are simple.
All you need to do is we're going to ask you questions, and you have to answer them either as one word or one sentence. So just one sentence, right? At the very, very most. Okay. And it's like we're going to give you what? 10 seconds to answer.
Oh my God.
That's loads. 10 seconds is loads.
A long time. Well, just answer as quick as you can, basically, right? Okay. So are you ready, Trey? You ready?
I'm ready. I think so. I think so.
Fantastic.
All right. Okay, Trey, what is one thing which you love that you would give up in order to be an even better writer?
Coffee.
Okay, theater or film?
Theater.
If you could tell your younger self something, what would it be?
You're worthy.
Would you consider an unproduced play as incomplete?
No.
What is the best money you have ever spent as a writer?
Taking my family on vacation with my Kink money.
I love that. Where did you go? Real quick, where did you go?
We went to Jamaica, and then we also did Trinidad, so that was great. Yeah,
both okay, so I'm feeling really loved now. My dad's from Trinidad, my mom's from Jamaica. Anyway, just simple facts.
No, look at that. Like, Trey, she's giving you the black girl nod. She feels seen. Look at
you.
Yeah, Trey. Yeah, I see you. Okay, do you read your reviews? And if yes, why? If no, why? Why not?
Yes. And no. and I know that's a complicated question. I used to, and I write about this in Funny Black Girl in Love, and this is not going to be does this have to be a short sentence?
Okay, go. Come on, just go.
Yeah, we want to hear. We want to hear.
Okay. I have a tendency, when the Kink was happening, we had so much great reviews. Everybody loved the play. And then there was this one reviewer who was just disgusting. Like, it was just so based in ignorance and racism. And it said, the Kink is the ghetto Lion King. That was the exact
my goodness,
headline.
I feel triggered.
From one of our national reviewers in Canada, that's what they decided to say. And I write about it in the book, how I zeroed in on this one review, even though we were the talk of the town, we were sold out seats, people were lining up, people were scalping the tickets, but this one reviewer basically nearly put me to bed, right? Like, I felt so hurt and angered and embarrassed. And one of my fellow actors, Debbie Young, who actually is an amazing playwright, you guys need to get her on here, Blood Clots, she does the play Blood Clot, came up to me and she tore the page of the newspaper out and she burnt it, and she said, we don't do our work for them, we do our work for Black women. And the reason why he's upset is because they're so used to being about them.
Yes.
And because they're not centered in this story, they don't know what to do with this work. And so she said, bun them. And from that day on, I don't read bad reviews. I say bun them. And that is my go-to. Everyone who knows me knows I always say bun them. Because I don't do that.
Any takeaway from this conversation is bun them, yeah?
Bun them!
And that's how I handle reviewers from now on. I just say bun them. I don't care. Yeah.
There you go. You say bun them and you look for the Black girl nod. That's
exactly. And that's it.
Love it. Okay, back on. What are the three essential ingredients when writing a comedy?
It would be a drama, maybe.
Ooh. Well, comedy or drama?
No, she does comedy. Let's do both. Let's do good comedy. You do comedy. So let's do comedy and drama. Yes.
Comedy is, oh my God, three essential. I would say family drama, family dynamics always makes good comedy. I would say being able to laugh at yourself is another one. And not making people search for the punchline. Give it to them straight.
And drama, go.
Drama, having a dysfunctional family. Having a dysfunctional family who knows you're going to write about them. And having a dysfunctional family who will love you even when you write about them.
Yes.
Okay, this is the last one. So name two of the greatest Black female playwrights of all time, according to Trey Anthony.
Oh my God. Oh wow, that's a hard one. Oh my God, who can I say?
5 seconds, Trey.
Oh my God. I would say Debbie Young. I think she's amazing. I think she's underrated, and she definitely deserves her dues. Oh my God. And Lorraine Hansberry. That's my woman.
Okay.
That's my woman. Yeah.
You did it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Trey. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Writers' Room.
Thank you so much.
And when the world opens up, we hope we can meet in person, right? I don't know.
Oh, girl.
Yes.
I'm dying.
Maybe Jamaica. We'll meet you in Jamaica. How about that?
I don't mind. And I love LA, so I have to come to LA. And I love England. So those are my two favorite places. So I will come.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Oh, look. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
We'll when it all airs and stuff.
Okay, please do. I look forward to it. Thank you guys so much. Have a great one.
You.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.